Welcome back to Askewed Reviews, and we are continuing the Fast and the Furious franchise, as this time of year it's all about family. And we have this film today, which is the 2009 movie Fast and Furious. Here is your trivia question for today. What is the name of the short film that shows how Dom got his team from the beginning of this film? The answer will be at the end of this video. So we are now on the fourth film in this series, and this one takes place 4 years after the events of Too Fast, Too Furious. At the beginning of this film, we meet Dom and his new group of street racers and hijackers. So for their current heist, Dom and his team are trying to steal a bunch of gas tanks. They manage to do so, but they almost lose Letty in the process. This causes Dom to realize that he's pulled Letty into a world that's too dangerous for her, so he decides to venture off on his own. Sometime later, Dom receives a phone call from his sister Mia, who notifies Dom that Letty has been murdered. So Dom, of course, goes on the warpath to find out who actually killed Letty. Now, while all of that is going on, we also find out that Brian has actually joined up with the FBI since the events of Too Fast, Too Furious. It also appears that Brian is now on the same case as Dom. All the information seems to lead back to a drug dealer named Braga and the people that work for him. So once Dom figures this out, he decides to try and go undercover as a drug runner for Braga. Now, wouldn't you know it though? Brian also goes undercover as a drug runner for Braga. So will Dom and Brian be able to put their differences aside and work together to get revenge for Letty? So for the first time in the Fast and the Furious franchise, the same director from the last film directed the next one. Justin Lin came back to direct this fourth film. This is the first time in the series where Vin Diesel was actually a producer. Also, Vin Diesel actually refused to come back unless Paul Walker also came back. Most of the movie was actually filmed in the Dominican Republic, where the movie takes place. Some scenes, though, were still filmed in Los Angeles, California. This was really the last movie in the series where street racing was a major factor. Going forward, it really started to elevate to being more of like heist movies and spy movies. There were actually 240 cars built specifically for this film. This movie was actually the feature film debut of Gal Gadot. They also allowed her to do quite a few of her own stunts due to her military background. Han does a bit of foreshadowing in this film. When he mentions that he wants to go to Tokyo, this is something that he does in the next few films, but of course this all leads up to the events of Tokyo Drift. Ron Yuan, who plays David Park, suffered from vertigo and was absolutely terrified during this scene. Here's something odd but interesting. Did you happen to know that both the Fast and the Furious and the Final Destination films released their second, third, fourth, and fifth movies in the exact same years? Here's something else that I also just found odd. The fourth film in The Fast and the Furious just uses the same title as the first movie but without the, and for Final Destination, it uses the word the in its fourth film but not the first one. Alright, now it's time for the family counter. The word family is used twice in this movie, and both of those instances are by Mia. So when it comes to the film Fast and Furious, I really did enjoy it, and I'm glad it was one of those bring the band back together kind of movies, but I do have to say at the same time, I didn't feel it was any better than the first and second films, so I'm still going to give this one a 3 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, what is the name of the short film that shows how Dom got his team from the beginning of this film? So there is a short 18-minute film called Los Bandoleros, which Vin Diesel actually directed. You can usually find this on the special features for your copy of Fast and Furious. In this short film, we're shown how Dom and Letty get the rest of their team, which consists of Leo, Santos, Han, and Kara. Which, by the way, Kara is another character like Leon from the first film that apparently just is a big part of the team but never shows up again. Also, there's technically a family counter for this short film, as the word familia, which is of course Spanish for family, is used once. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.